Welcome to Workforce Energy Management webinar. We're going to continue the series that we did in the fall. It was a big hit because we're shifting the mentality from pushing through, from adding more to re-energizing the workforce, focusing on capacity and the things that bring value instead of just more. This topic is near and dear to my heart because when you can name certain things, it has some power. It has some sense of direction of where we want to go next. Quiet moves at work. We've seen it, we just haven't named it. You've seen the people who have just slowly checked out because everything has become too much. You have seen people who have went through seasons of life at home, and now it's spilling into work, isn't it? We've all had those moments where we were present at the meeting, but we weren't really performing. We're completely mentally checked out. And the three quiet moves that I want to focus on in this webinar is the trending themes that I'm seeing with some of the clients I work with, and that is quiet quitting. So they don't know that something is wrong within their team and someone is struggling, someone is misaligned in their role or overloaded, and they slowly exit. All you get is the resignation letter. And truthfully, they don't owe you anything more than that, but we don't want to go there. We want a sense of direction on what are we doing wrong? Where could we align and where could we match up? Because as the workforce continues to shift, we're already seeing these labor changes into fractional, contract, and freelance work. Some of these people exiting are your top talent, and we don't want that, right? We want your top talent to thrive. So maybe there's still a place in our organization and it looks a little bit different. Maybe it's part-time, maybe it's freelance, maybe it's project work. But right now we're only giving them one option, and that's out. So we want to reduce some of that quiet quitting by having these conversations earlier, which we're going to get into what is happening that's pushing them out. The other term that I want to talk about in the quiet moves is quiet vacationing. Now, with the remote nature and flexibility in schedules, I have some clients that want people in office. They don't want as much autonomy on their teams, and it's because of this quiet vacationing where they're not getting as much production or value out of their teams in which they used to. And that's because they're more focused on visuals than impact. We know that if metrics are good, if you're clear and aligned with what you're supposed to be doing, there's role clarity and responsibilities of who owns what, remote work works. Flexibility schedules, shared roles work. But when you don't have those clear roles and responsibilities, good metrics in place, those back and forth conversations, quiet vacationing can easily happen. You can hide out, you can milk the time. And what I find interesting is we want to focus on quiet vacationing and punishing that. But if we actually fix the root cause issue behind that we're going to get into, you can move into even more future work concepts, new ways of working, like 4-day work weeks, like unlimited PTO, all the things and benefits that top talent is looking for. So when you can address it at the root, you're not only fixing some of these disengagement problems, but you're actually moving into future ways of working. The last one, which, I have some contention in because I've been studying burnout for a couple years, burnout myself, and then the research that has been before me for 60 years, and that is quiet cracking. What that is burnout. We made it a fancy name to match all the other quiet moves, but what quiet cracking is burnout. What is scary about quiet cracking, similar to burnout, is 40% of people in this that are on the edge, right? They're going to crack, they're burning out, are not asking for help. And they won't ask for help. And I wanted to avoid the statistic myself of being burnt out or quitting. And so I became part of that statistic of 40% of people that don't ask for help. So we're going to talk about how do we acknowledge those signals of that type of chronic high stress and guide those people forward, because 40% of your workforce is a large number. Now, why this is such a prevalent topic, quiet moves at work, is because 70% of the workforce is disengaged with their work, which means 70% of the workforce is in one of these categories. Are they quiet quitting, sliding out? Are they quiet vacationing, just milking the time until they get disciplined or fired? Are they quiet cracking or that burnout? So when you really look at 70% of the workforce is in one of these quiet moves at work, that's substantial. When we are constantly talking about results and outcomes and productivity, well, part of that equation is who's engaged with their work, because you're not going to get more output if people are disengaged. So let's talk about the common signals. that when we start workforce energy management programs, what are people seeing on their teams? Because that will help me guide the program to customize it one way over another. Do we need to work with leaders? Do we need to work with the team? Do we need to work on communication? The three top things that usually come up are fewer opinions are shared. So they're not challenging each other anymore. They're not creating or innovating when they have discussions. They're just doing. They're just doing the things. Step 1, 2, 3 every day. Kind of becoming in that zombie mode, right? Where you just day after day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So they don't have a lot of engagement in the discussion anymore. And to tell you the truth, just talking about it, going back to my burnout collapse, that seems like a lot of work, right? When you're in that type of state where you're already looking for another job. You are remote working, so you just don't have to be around the team. Or you're burnt out. You can't add more. It's survivalship mode that I distrust everyone around me. I don't even want to be involved. So fewer opinions are being shared. That's a scary place to be in this changing world right now. Because what we need is innovation and creativity and adaptability. And that only thrives when the energy is there. So that's one thing people are witnessing. The second thing people are witnessing within these programs is the self-protection going on. So they're being less emotionally involved. And that means kind of, I don't care. And that's a sign of helplessness and hopelessness. Now, do I think that there's a line for work, right? You should care enough, but it doesn't have to be your whole life. And that's that line. But what they're seeing is they're not even getting up to that line. They just don't care from the beginning, from the moment they walk in the door, the moment that they sign on in the day. I don't care. And that's not aiding in their energy either. So organizational wise, you're not getting productivity and the results you want. But from an individual, you're not getting the value out of your days. You're just doing things to do things, and that will add up over time into loss of identity. You just don't have that spark anymore. You don't even want to get up for the day because there's no purpose. So on both sides, you can see the energy draining. Now, the third thing that we're seeing in programs that commonly comes up is less presence in the room. And that means no cameras on when there used to be cameras on. People don't want to come in the office anymore. Can we just do it virtually? And again, there's productivity optimization and doing things remotely, but then there's also isolation. That means I'm hiding. I'm hiding out from my team. I'm hiding out from my boss. So I'm not taking the calls. I'm not responding in the chat. I don't have my camera on. Those type of events that are coming up. So they're seeing less physical presence, right? They're isolating and checking out. Now, I asked them, why do you think this is happening, right? And they'll mention the changing times going on in our environment, the changing time in their workforce. But then some continually trending things come up. Unclear roles. You can only quiet vacation if roles and responsibilities are unclear, if metrics are unclear. Who owns what is kind of a hot potato throwing match. Because if your role is clear, you'll notice if someone is checking out sooner. If the metrics are clear, it's a proactive metric to say, hey, Kelly, what's going on? This week was really low on your numbers. What's the hurdle? What's the challenge going on? So when you have unclear roles, it's easier to hide out. It's easier to do these quiet moves, exits, or even burnout because the signals aren't very clear that something's going on. There's too many people sharing the same thing. The other thing that's happening is lack of feedback. And again, it goes back to that survivorship mode. And I'm definitely one that experienced this firsthand because the day I gave my resignation in was the day my boss found out I was in burnout. No discussions before that about the stress level that I was having, that I was suffocating, that I was underwater, that I was doing 6 people's jobs. Lack of feedback was broken. We talked every day, but we talked about operations. We talked about the job. We never talked about capacity. We never talked about Kelly's specific hurdles and challenges that she's having. We never talked about the people challenges she was having as the HR person. It goes back to that saying, HR doesn't have an HR person. So that lack of feedback and cycle of give and receive was broken. So that's the second thing that was really driving some of these quiet moves. The third thing is a delayed response. Have you ever had a situation at work and it's brought to light and you finally find the confidence and courage to bring it up? You have some good discussion in a meeting or in a team call, and then nothing is done about it. That is discouraging. You feel the momentum, like we spoke up, we came up with some practical solutions forward, and no response. And it could be because it has to go levels up. It could be that they are working on it, but not communicating back those steps at this time. But in general, that delayed response is disengaging you. It's saying, hey, I'm glad you spoke up, but we're not going to do anything about that. So what are you going to do in response? You're not going to speak up again. And that breeds silence instead of engagement. So when you look at the 70% of workforce is disengaged with their work, it's not surprising. Feedback loops are broken. We are silencing people. And there's unclear roles and responsibilities because of so much change. We're not taking time to really take a moment and lay out all those process flows and workflows and say who owns what, who's going to do what, who's going to be the backup. So let's go one more layer deep. Those are the common behaviors you're going to see with quiet moves at work. The quiet quitting, quiet vacation, quiet cracking. The training variables in play there. But let's go one deeper. There's 4 work styles within DISC in which you will see specific stress behaviors come up preemptively that you can start to address early. So D's are our dominants. They're very fast movers. They're results orientated. So some stress behaviors that you're going to see before this quiet move even starts is they're going to be a little more forceful, right? They want to get things done. They want to get things done now. They're forcing your hand. They're forcing the team. They're being abrupt in their emails. They're being restless. And this type of demanding behavior is saying, I am overloaded. I don't have control of the situation or the variables in play. I don't have that autonomy that I'd like to play in. So that stress is amping up and you're going to start to see these stress behaviors. Now, solution steps with that is giving understanding to what are the hurdles and delays versus blame versus, hey, we got this. Let's talk about it next meeting. Again, do you see delayed response? So understanding the delays and having that quick conversation around it. Where are places that they can control? What are things that are in their roles and responsibilities that they can act on today to get some of that momentum and stress released? And then what are practical actionable steps until you can get to the bigger picture solution? They want movement. They want results. And when they don't see it, you're amping up that stress and you're giving them that one option. Quiet quitting, quiet vacation, quiet cracking. Now, I's are also fast movers, a little bit more social. And they're kind of your dreamers. So they are optimistic, right? They're bubbly and they'll be overly optimistic, almost to that like toxic positivity when they get to these stressed type of behaviors. They might even be critical of others. Like, why can't they just do this? Why can't they just do that? Why can't someone else just help me, right? They're being critical of others versus focusing on their own world because they're stressed. And that comes with a tinge of sarcasm usually. So what you can do to help with those quiet moves that are slowly brewing into resentment and I need to leave and check out and disengage is to give them kind of bite-sized projects and steps, bite-sized breaks so that they can feel that progress forward, but they're not getting ahead of themselves. They're not getting into this overly drawn big picture that they're not going to be able to achieve. So bite-sized breaks and steps forward. You want to give them space for their voice, not to dominate the team conversation or the one-on-one meeting, but they want to speak. They want their voice heard. So giving them that type of space and then allowing room for those brainstorm solutions. So D's and I's work really well together in stress because they adapt well. They're fast movers, but they need that autonomy. They need that voice. They need that control. So remember that when you start seeing those stress behaviors, because again, if you are not going another layer deep, specific to people's work styles, you're stressing them out more and getting them into those quiet moves at work where they're going to want to leave and disengage. Now, S are supportives. These are our background people. So they don't like to be at the front lines. They don't like to be the big voice in the rooms. But man, they can get stuff done. They're exactly what they say, supportive. So their stress behaviors are resisting change. So they might have debates going back and forth with all the change going on right now. The environment's changing all around us with technology, with the labor force, with products process, and people changes. So take into consideration that naturally right now they are uncomfortable. There's so much change going on. So they have a natural stress already coming into work. So they might come off as stubborn, right? I don't want to. I'm going to wait till retirement in 2 years, or I'll wait for this next initiative to blow over. They might get judgmental. Oh, here's another thing we have to do. And this is just a response to, I don't want to change. There's more change than I can handle right now. So, what you want to do to calm that before they start doing those quiet moves is having a one on one conversation. You might have a great team discussion on the changes going on, or the stress level, or their capacity right now. S's are, again, more of those silent voices. They'll have that conversation one on one with you, but they're not going to have it in a large group. So they have a small core group that they will talk, be vulnerable with, really be genuine about their conversations. Find that group for them. You can bring insight from others that they trust. So say, maybe you're not in their inner circle where they have genuine conversations, but their coworker does, and their coworker's on board with the change or seems engaged with their work. Having a conversation with them, not triangulation, but having a conversation with them on how they can support the employee that's struggling. Because again, if they're struggling and you're seeing these stress behaviors, you're giving them one-way ticket out, right out into disengagement. And then focusing on those genuine conversations. They don't want slogans. They don't want posters. They want genuine conversations about what are we doing? What are we doing next? Now, the last style I want to talk about is C's. They're also struggling with the high change going on. So you might see a lot of these stress behaviors happening. And I'm from the manufacturing industry, and a lot of my clients are in manufacturing. So they are struggling with turnover with these type of work styles for good reason. The quiet moves at work. They were already disengaged before they quit, before they went remote and they stopped performing, before they were burnt out and contacting me. So the stress behaviors that were showing up preliminary were they are probing, like way too far, data analysis paralysis. They're probing at things that aren't even involved in their role and responsibilities or project. They're being overcautious because it feels like a high risk. There's so much change going on. They can't seem to get control, enough information to understand. So they're being overcautious, which means they might be slow to take steps forward. And then they'll be indecisive because of the change going on all around them and then being in a stress state. They just don't know what to do next, right? Because again, everything can be high risk when you're in a stress state. So what we want to do to support them before they start looking for jobs, before they start disengaging, is to seek their input. You will truly understand where the gaps are. And when I've had these conversations with engineers and technical people before, what they need is just information. The vendor it came from, a conversation with the person who's leading this project. It's literally a very tangible gap that you have to close, but we need to give space and time to that type of conversation. They want to be included in the planning, again, so they have an understanding of the scope. Where are we? Where are we going next? What's the next step? Where is the actual end goal that we're going? And then providing those data and details is going to keep them re-engaged, feed that need, and close that gap. Now, focusing on those few behaviors that we mentioned about fewer opinions being shared, less emotional investment, the loss of presence in a room, right? Cameras off, not coming in the office anymore. Those are where the quiet moves we see on a big scale. And then moving down into those work styles, the stress behaviors that you're actually seeing for each individual will allow you to start to move forward. So that means we can start reducing those energy drains. What's sucking the energy in the room? Mine was endless meetings, and we didn't really get outcomes. So it ended up being a big pet peeve for me, and I would show up to meetings and be disengaged. I would show up and have information, but I wouldn't really do more than that. Quiet moves at work. So reducing some of those very apparent low-hanging fruit energy drains is going to start to bring the energy back, the engagement back. Then we want to shift conversations. What conversations are you having in your one-on-ones, in your team meetings? Usually they're tactical because that's comfortable. It's product and process and technical things first. people last. So getting leaders comfortable with more candid type of conversation, energy driven conversations, which there's other resources on my social media channels, YouTube, podcasts, and website for that. But shifting the conversation from tactical, always about output, to capacity. What hurdles are we seeing? What's some challenges that we hit this week? Getting ahead of those versus another broken blinker, another energy drain. Do you see where it starts to build up, where delay in the response? I'm going to leave. I'm going to quiet vacation. I'm burning out. The third thing you can do, so we've reduced some of these energy drains. We shifted conversations from output to capacity so we can sustain this work. And then you want to support autonomy. You want to support employees being able to speak up. Again, that like psychological safety, that the feedback loop isn't broken, that you can feel free in certain situations to speak up, right? Speaking up about something not related to the meeting we're having right now, not a good fit. But speaking up in our one-on-one meeting, prompt it, welcome it. Because what you're doing is giving them a voice, giving them an option to move forward. And when we start closing those doors or only focus on tactical, you're only giving them one option, and that's out. The quiet moves at work. So we need to re-engage the workforce, that's 70%, by restoring capacity, by restoring the energy within our teams. And this is through the language we use, the conversations we have, and the actions we take on those energy drains. Now, the quiet moves at work, I think the biggest thing that we can take away from this, from naming it, is it's a signal, right? If you're seeing people quiet quitting, they're not even having a conversation before they leave. If you see people going into remote work or disengaging with their cameras, not coming to office, signal. If you're seeing people burn out, right? They're present, but they're not really performing. They're snapping at people. A lot of burnout type of signals, tired, exhausted, not creative anymore. It's a signal, right? And workforce energy management isn't about doing more. It's about acknowledging those signals and showing up differently, not just for yourself so you can manage your energy, but for your team. Imagine a work design in which quiet moves don't happen because things are actually being acknowledged instead of delayed, where conversations are moving forward, momentum, without adding another task, another responsibility. What would work look like? What would work feel like if you did that? If all this sounds familiar, I want you to know that I work with organizations to engage that energy and productivity while preventing burnout. We should connect for what this program would look like for you. What would DISC look like within your teams? And start to close these gaps so that we can be proactive, so that the quiet moves aren't moves at all.